Howdy again everyone. Today we're taking a look at a new manual focus lens from Chinese manufacturer Meike, the 85mm f1.8 FE for Sony's E-mount mirrorless cameras, full frame or APS-C. It'll be available in April and its price will be £185 in the UK or $200 in the US, so it's potentially good value for money. I'd like to thank Meike for sending me an early review sample of this lens for testing, although as usual this is a totally independent review. Everyone loves a fast 85mm lens. Whether used on full frame or APS-C, it's great for portrait and subject photography and can give you some very nicely out of focus backgrounds. F1.8 also lets you shoot in darker conditions and get faster shutter speeds, although something I should tell you right off the bat is that this lens does not feature image stabilization, and also, strangely, it's not currently compatible with in-body image stabilization within Sony's cameras. The in-body image stabilization just won't work with this lens, even if you set it up manually. I've never seen that before, it's quite a shame, although the lens does have USB connectivity at the bottom there, so perhaps that might be fixed in the future with a firmware update. If you fit it onto an APS-C camera, then the images you get will be the full frame equivalent of 128mm, with the equivalent depth of field of f2.8 or so it's a much tighter angle of view on APS-C. We'll look at some APS-C test results a bit later. First, let's look at the build quality. The lens is slightly on a large size for an 85mm f1.8 optic. The rear element is deeply recessed into the lens's body, leaving me to suspect that this is actually a reflex lens design. The lens feels light, plasticky and a bit hollow, with a slightly wobbly focus ring, all of which doesn't really inspire confidence. Its weight is 420 grams. That focus ring is made of metal and feels a little hard-edged. It turns averagely smoothly and about 120 degrees, so at least just precisely enough for focusing at f1.8. It works with a clutch mechanism without hard stops, so you can keep turning it right around if you want, highly unusual in a manual focus lens. A very nice feature though is that, despite being manual focus, this lens does have some electronics to it. Firstly, a camera controlled aperture mechanism with 9 iris blades, very nice. It also sends EXIF information to your camera, and also, when you turn the focus ring, if manual focus assist is turned on your camera, then your Sony camera will automatically magnify the image to help you nail focus. That's a great feature that you don't normally get in inexpensive manual focus lenses, make it handle a lot more quickly and easily. The lens has a 67mm filter thread and it comes with quite a deep lens hood. Overall, the build quality feels a bit cheap and the lens does a few slightly surprising things, but the way it works on your camera is actually very nice. It's just a shame the lens won't let you use in-body image stabilization. Well, now let's look at image quality. I'm testing it on a 42 megapixel full frame camera first, a Sony a7R II. Firstly, at f1.8, in the middle of the image we see fantastic sharpness and not bad contrast. We also see quite warm colours. However, on contrasting edges there's some pretty strong purple fringing to be seen. That's only on contrasting edges though. The corners look quite soft, with some chromatic aberration visible. However, stop down to f2.8 for a big improvement there, with quite good sharpness and reduced colour fringing. And the middle of the image is really pin sharp now. At f4, those last traces of colour fringing are gone in the middle, and the corners continue to look quite sharp. At f5.6, there's another small improvement, and at f8 and f11, ditto. So, it might not be the best 85mm lens I've tested, but its image quality is on the good side. At f1.8 you get some colour fringing and soft corners, but the image is brilliantly sharp in the middle and across most of the middle of the image frame, and all you have to do is to stop down to f2.8 or f4 for very nice image quality across the whole image frame, so not bad. Alright, let's try it on an APS-C camera, my little Sony a5100 with its 24 megapixel sensor. At f1.8, sharpness in the middle remains fantastic, although the higher density APS-C sensor emphasizes that purple color fringing on contrasting edges, unfortunately. Colors still seem to be a little on the warm side. The corners look a little soft, and just like on full frame, color fringing is quite notable here. At f2.8 though, we see quite acceptable resolution in the corners, and the purple fringing in the middle is tamed. At f4, we see a perfect image in the middle, and another slight improvement in the corners. f5.6, f8 and f11 all look brilliant in the corners. So, on APS-C this lens is actually pretty sharp, but its key issue is color fringing at f1.8. Stopped down a little though, the image quality is really nice. Alright, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting now on a full frame camera. The lens projects just a touch of pincushion distortion here, nothing to worry about, in fact that's quite common on an 85mm lens. The corners are rather dark at f1.8 as you'd expect. They brighten up considerably at f2.8, and at f4 we see even brightness across the image frame. This lens can focus as closely as 85 cm to your subject, average for a lens of this type. At close distances and f1.8, image quality softens a little. Stop down to f2.8 though for great close-up results. Let's take a look at how the lens works against bright lights. Not very well really, we see quite a lot of flaring overall. You should definitely use the provided lens hood wherever you can. And finally, bokeh. At f1.8, this lens can throw your backgrounds nicely out of focus, and those backgrounds look relatively smooth actually. You can spot some colourful highlighting on bright points of light sometimes, but overall the backgrounds look fairly nice and undistracting. Overall, the Meike 85mm f1.8 FE is a slightly quirky lens in its design, but when I was out shooting with it, I found it worked pretty well on my Sony camera, except for the in-body image stabilization not working. I found it really handy to have a camera-controlled aperture mechanism, and I loved that whenever I turned the focus ring it would automatically jump into a magnified image. In terms of image quality, this lens is capable of pretty impressive sharpness actually, even at f1.8, although that colour fringing wide open is a bit bothersome. For its price though, it can give you some really great images, so if its quirks don't bother you, I can recommend it.